Very good evening, students. So today, welcome to the fourth session. Today we have science and technology, current affairs related RLP questions. Let's go ahead. So as a usual, our lecture plan will be, we'll give a broad picture and we'll have this material, science and tech current affairs material. You can download the material from our Telegram channel, and it covers most of the elements from data perspective, from value addition perspective, what all you should know for this current year's mains. Everything will be covered under this specific document. It's not too much lengthy. It's designed in such a way that only those things which you can really replicate in the exam, that is only put in this document. On that note, you might have already gone through the international relations, security and other documents. In a very similar fashion, this is also designed. Similarly, we have this 6-question discussion. I hope many of you might have written the answers already. Let's move ahead. So these are the 6 questions for the day. We have a question on 2022 Nobel Prize, Physics Nobel Prize. Then we have a question on Indian Space Policy 2023. Then Acharya J.C. Bose, a question on contributions of Acharya J.C. Bose. Then we have intellectual property rights, a question on IPR regime in India. Then Niti Aayog, you might have read in the newspapers. Niti Aayog has recently came out with National Artificial Intelligence Strategy. So we have a question related to, there are so many other things also happening like GPTs and all other OpenAI, so much other platforms are coming up related to artificial intelligence. So we have one question on artificial intelligence. Then lastly, there is a question on semiconductor industry, how it is strategic importance on that aspect. We have 115 marker question. So these 6 questions we are going to discuss in this class. Let's get started. This is the first question. If you haven't gone through the question, do go through the question once. If you can write the answer, pause the video, write the answer, then continue the video. Otherwise, at least brainstorm what are the different parts you're going to make for this question. What are different example, different data you can recollect for this question. After that, we will continue the discussion. Yeah, I hope you have done the process. So let's get started. Let's read the question once. Comment on the importance of groundbreaking discoveries that led to the Nobel Prize in Physics 2022. Okay, so what exactly is the prize is not given in the question. Okay, how can India position itself as a leader in this emerging field? So as a student, what are the difficulties you face in this question? One of the most important thing is what exactly it is talking about. It is not clearly or explicitly given. If you have a fair idea on what sector, on what subject the Nobel Prize 2022 was given, you could have fairly attempted this question. But otherwise, if you don't have, cannot recollect the prelims knowledge which you have read 2-3 months before, then this question becomes very challenging, and there is high chance that you can get totally misdirected if you think something else regarding this emerging technology. So at least some of you might have already got what we are talking about, what the emerging technology this question is talking about. What exactly it is? It is about quantum mechanics or quantum science. So otherwise this question is quite straightforward. If you can recollect this much of data, this much of information, then it's very easy, straightforward question. You can actually attempt this paper. Let's move ahead. So what are the different parts of this question? We have an introduction which will talk about the discovery or the Nobel Prize 2022 in physics. You can also talk about quantum physics, how quantum science, how it is important, role of quantum science. All these elements you can bring in and make a fair introduction. In body, 2 different parts are directly asked in the question. One is importance of this groundbreaking discovery. You have to comment on this. You can give 4-5 at least points on why this is important. This can occupy around 50% of your answer sheet. 50% means after introduction and conclusion, what is left, 50% of your answer should be on comment on importance of this discovery. And second part of the question, how India can position itself as a leader in this emerging field. You give another 4-5 points here. That means 10 plus points you can generate. Now this should be the normal structure of the answer. As every class we are saying, in main still lot of students make this one mistake. that is not understanding the question properly, not answering exactly what is asked. I'm repeating the same words again and again. Every question has an objective criteria where mark should be given. If you are showing off your knowledge, if you are writing too much about the specific discoveries, or if you are too much writing about the science in this question, you're not going to be rewarded. You have to actually understand in what direction the question is being asked, and you have to exactly generate your points on that direction only. Everything else that you are going to write in your answer paper beyond what is asked, you should cut it down to the minimum level. You show it as a diagram. I always say in many of the questions we see, way forward is not being asked. If way forward is not asked, you just draw a simple diagram showing 4-5 way forward points. Don't give too much example, don't give too much space and too much time into these kind of questions, these kind of areas in your answer. And always look for what exactly the question is asking. Keep always this in mind, especially in questions where there is a statement. If there is a keyword after the statement, then you have to give more weightage to argumenting in support of the statement. If there is no keyword, a statement is given and totally different question is asked, then your responsibility to just address the key statement that is given. You give one paragraph, use this key statement in introduction. So do something, but don't give too much of weightage to the statement in that kind of questions. So these dynamics you should be very fixed in your mind. What exactly is the demand of the question, and that only you are going to replicate in your answer sheets. So let's talk something about these specific question. So today we have this 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics. What exactly this prize is given to? At least who you cannot, it should be very difficult, very hard for students to ask to remember all the names and all. So it's not even expected from the student to recollect the name. Just for information, we have put it here. So Alain Aspect, John F. Clauser, and Anton Zeilinger. These three guys were awarded the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics for their pioneering work in quantum entanglement. What exactly is quantum entanglement? We have learned this in detail in our prelims current affairs classes. What exactly is this? When two particles are said to be entangled, they are like correlated. Their physical properties, their existence, their turn, spin, we can speak, everything of their physical properties, you can think these are correlated as one single entity, irrespective of what is the physical separation between them. Even if the two photons are light years apart, these two are entangled in such a way, this acts as a single entity. You make changes to one photon here, there will be an instant level of change happening to the other photon in the entangled photon. So this property we call it as quantum entanglement. And sometimes if we see also the debates going on between quantum physics as well as classical physics, there is so much of conflict. Like there are some of the quantum physicists or some of these classical physicists are not ready to take the propositions of the other sections. So this lead to some kind of confusion, which one is actually quantum mechanics really works in practical life. And to this solution was their discoveries. What they proved is their experiment demonstrated quantum entanglement violated Bell's inequality and providing definitive proof that quantum mechanics cannot be explained by local and hidden variables. So what exactly they have done? Like too much of knowledge on Bell's inequality, this is not expected of the student. Still, we have also covered this in our prelims current affairs classes. So what exactly this is talking about is, if Bell's inequality for anything in classical physics to exist, it should not violate Bell's inequality. If something is not violating Bell's inequality, then by making some changes to the equations or adding hidden variables to the classical physics equations, you can explain the XYZ phenomenon. So this was like extending this classical physics phenomenon into the quantum arena also. This was the earlier proposition. You can use or you can extend the quantum or classical physics dynamics like gravity equations or these kind of equations, charge electromagnetics equation, these kind of physical equations we use generally in physics. This can be equally by adding some of the hidden variables can be extended into quantum physics or quantum world. This was the proposition, and this discovery of these three guys proved it wrong. They proved that this quantum entanglement or quantum mechanics, it's violated the Bell's inequality, and this means that you cannot simply extend this classical phenomenon or classical equations or proposition of classical physics into the quantum arena. There is something that is totally new that is operating. Then we got into this quantum entanglement. We speak about quantum superposition. So these all ideas origin came from this discovery of proving that there exists variable proof or verifiable proof for quantum mechanics phenomena. So for that, this Nobel Prize was awarded in 2022. Even though like too much of physics, you may have been confused a little bit, but I hope you got a fair idea. At least to write a 1 or 2 sentence introduction, you got a fair idea on these subjects. What you have to do as a homework is do check out all the other Nobel Prizes. Do have a look on what are the other Nobel Prizes that given in 2022. Is there any such topic on which the question can be framed? If you think there is a chance a question can come from this XYZ technology, or for some or other reasons something related to India is also in news regarding that technology, if something you can interpolate, do prepare that topic and go for the exam. Let's move ahead. So now we come to the body part of the answer, importance of these discoveries. I'm again saying only difficulty in this question is if you understand this is a quantum mechanics related question or quantum science related question, then it's quite straightforward. So as I told earlier, this opened up new possibilities. Proof of quantum mechanics has been established, laid for a foundation of quantum information sciences. Like today we see so much of quantum computers, quantum satellites, all these developments we have been seeing in day-to-day world right now. Likely some researchers, high advanced level of researchers, competition between Google and other tech giants to acquire the state of quantum supremacy. We see some examples in the next slide. All these processes are going on. So you can connect with all these foundations to these developments were led by these discoveries. Paved way for development of quantum computers, quantum cryptography, encryption technologies, quantum encryption technology, teleportation, and other technology. All these technologies base came from these discoveries. Applications in computing, communications, finance, artificial intelligence, many more decades. At least 4 or 5 points you have to generate on importance of this discovery to the science, to the society, to the future generations also. You can connect from these stakeholders and generate 4 or 5 points very easily. Now, these are some of the examples I was talking about. Google's Sycamore project processor. It already claimed that it acquired a state of quantum supremacy. But there are so many competing arguments against it also. So, but the argument is that if quantum supremacy or it has developed a stable processor which can works on quantum mechanics, it will be able to do the processes a normal computer or a classical computer take 10,000 years, it can be done in a few seconds. So you can see how much is the difference that is happening. Almost all the encryption technologies we are using today for banking system, for cryptocurrencies, all this can go for a toss if really quantum supremacy or a quantum computer came into existence in the near future. So this kind of a transformative or revolutionary technology. IBM's Eagle processor, which is in pipeline in 2023, it is going to be came out. So it is said to be 10 times more powerful than Google's Sycamore processor. Similarly, another example you can see is the Messias quantum satellite of China. So this has been also successfully launched by China. China is also investing. You might have Chinese technology establishment project, this kind of project, they are investing hugely in emerging technologies, including quantum mechanics, including artificial intelligence, including big data analytic tools. All these Chinese investing too much, and this is also a part of their interest. So some of the examples also you can cite in the answer to bring some specificity into an answer you are writing. Now coming to the next part of the answer. For India to establish itself as a global leader in quantum information science, these are the steps to be taken. Think from different dimensions, like increase the investment, make a stable policy regarding how the developments of quantum science should go ahead, infrastructure developments, how you should make such infrastructure development to facilitate future developments happening in the sector, collaborate with global as well as local stakeholders, commercialization, bring in private sector, bring in more applications of this industry, setting up certain standards. We have learned this too much on AI, artificial intelligence. So already groundbreaking discoveries are happening in different sectors. So it's very important you set some standards of regulation, standards of application of the XYZ technology. So these are the dimensions you should think on. Rest you can write, you invest both in academy and industry. Investment of private sector should be incentivized. You give some CSR programs can be extended to it, or you give tax benefits for investments in by private sector in emerging technologies. Similarly, National Quantum Mission, something like that, a comprehensive mission that takes into account all different dimensions of this should be implemented. R&D, which coordinates R&D happening across different institutions, IITs and other institutions in the country. Infrastructure development, like we have recently heard about Geo's 6G announcement. This can be as a base for launching something much bigger on scale, something like a quantum based scale, something you can think about. International collaborations, of course, Google, IBM, I already told that. They are the giant leaders in this quantum supremacy race. So India can collaborate with them. Commercialization, we can use our IT base to expand more into upcoming sectors. Setting up standards, as I already told, it's very important. You should have a regulatory system, you should have a grievance redressal system, or this system, or fair use process application system. All these systems should be established, how this technology should be used in day-to-day life. Then you can give a conclusion. I always say, don't write a very generalistic conclusion. This is a mistake students generally commit. You write all the answer fairly, but you leave, don't too much care about the conclusion. You have little bit of time, just keep in mind that your conclusion should not go in this line. Like you do all the above steps, then India will be a leader in quantum sciences. Don't give a such a generalistic conclusion. Try to bring out one specific point in the conclusion also. For this conclusion, you see the US National Initiative Act, 1.2 billion US dollar is being invested into this development of quantum sciences. So it is a large investment, and India should also, it is time for India should also pace up its investment as well as other initiatives. This can be taken as an inspiration. On this regard, you can conclude the answer. I hope the whole mechanics is clear. More importantly than content, it's quite important you understand the dynamics of answer writing and don't commit a mistake. The content you will gradually learn by the process. You will be writing too much of answers, going through these materials, going through current affairs materials, answer sheets. So knowledge will come gradually, but if you're committing a mistake in grasping the demands of the question or making a mistake in delivering the answers, then these areas you should keep in mind as a heighter and take any steps you need to clear this. Reach out to your mentors, teachers, and all these sectors. Show your answers. Try to incorporate if any suggestions, if any pattern of mistakes you are making in your answers. Let's move ahead. Go to the next question. Brainstorm on this question, then we will continue our discussion. Yeah, so I hope you have gone through the question. Analyze the key components of India Space Policy 2023 and their implications for India's space ambitions. So what all you are going to think in this question? One basic thing you have to do is, you have to, whatever the new policies came in, new government scheme is came, at least learn 5 key elements of this. Many of the current affairs material you might be referring to, many of the current affairs sources you might be referring to, it lists down a n number of 10 points throughout the page. So this kind of approach, it's very comprehensive, it has brought in too many elements, but this will make you should read, have such a sharp memory to remember all these, recollect during the exam and present in the paper. So what you are taking in your head, keep it to the most minimum level. At least stick down to 5 key elements of Indian space policy or Indian any other policies being put forward in the recent past. Keep at least 5 very specific, not generalistic points, 5 specific elements regarding this policy. For every policy, this should be your steady approach. Then second part of the question is implications for India's space ambitions. So what are the space ambitions you are going to talk about? You should have a fair view, like we have Gaganyaan mission that is going on. What is all about? It is all about taking man to moon. Similarly, we have Chandrayaan-3 that is being going on. Similarly, we have programs like Mars Orbiter Mission 2. Similarly, we have programs like relaunch or relaunch vehicles. These kind of technologies we are working on. So on these aspects, what are the contributions this policy can make? Other thing you can take of the private sector collaboration in space sector, space diplomacy. We have consistently talked about this in IR class. So these are the areas, these are the ambitions, India's space ambitions you can categorize into. So these areas, what you are going to do or how this policy is going to help, you can frame your answer on this regard, and this will give specificity to the second part of your answer. Let's move ahead. So what will be the structure of your answer? Introduction, it will be about Indian Space Policy 2023. You can give a very brief idea. In body, it shall include 2 parts. Analysis of key components of India space policy. There is the word analysis. I again said, give respect to these kind of words in the question. If analysis is given there, your answer should contain at least some points on pros and some points on cons. At least if it is a policy, there should be some point on criticism, some point on positive aspects. So these elements should be there in your paper. Don't just think that you just need to list the different provisions of this policy and your answer is done. Your answer is not done, and listing down the provisions is not exactly asked in the question also. The question is asking about analysis of this policy. So your answer should be on analysis only. Don't commit a mistake in these kind of mistakes. Second part is quite straightforward, implications for India's space ambitions. Then you write a conclusion and finish the answer. So this will be introduction. Indian space policy 2023 has thus been formulated as an overarching composite and dynamic framework to implement the reform vision of government in Indian space sector. So what is this reform vision of government? You can write a sentence, you can give some example regarding this also. You might have seen from 2020, lot of new organizations has been formed in the space sector. And what these new organizations are doing, these new organizations are increasing the private sector collaborations in the space sector. ISRO's role itself is going through a transformational phase. So a lot of developments, lot of institutional developments you are seeing in the space sector. So integrating or giving a framework to properly implement this reform vision, that is a key objective of Indian Space Policy 2023. Why is this policy coming into existence? You can start your introduction by answering this specific aspect. Now, these are some of the key reasons directly taken from the policy document to provide a comprehensive framework to guide India's space activities and encourage private sector participation. Previous policies were limited in scope. Similarly, to boost commercial space industry and allow private companies to offer end-to-end space services, to allow Indian consumers to directly procure space services from any domestic or overseas provider, to encourage R&D and make India a global hub for space activities. So these are different aspects on why exactly this policy has came into existence. Key components of the policy: it allows private sector to offer satellite communication, remote sensing, like whatever services you were provided by the government institutions or ISRO. Now the access to these data, these services, that has been opened up to private companies and provide guidelines for authorization. So if private sector is also being incorporated into it, I already told there is need for stringent regulations. So these regulations will be put forward by this XYZ policy, how the regulatory system should work, how, as I already told, the grievance redressal system should work. All these aspects will be considered in this overall framework. You can speak about in space as a single window for authorization and promotion of space activities. ISRO, in space, and NSIL, these were the two institutions very recently formed. ISRO to focus on R&D and NSIL to focus on commercialization of space sector. It allows private sector to own and operate satellites, ground stations, launch vehicles, etc. through licensing by InSpace. So it is defining different role for every organization, that is giving an institutional structure to how space arena should be governed in the future. Promotes collaboration between industry, academia, and ISRO, encourages startups and incubators in space sector, ensures open access to ISRO facilities and satellite data for private entities, allows ITU filings by private companies, like access to data, access to satellite, right to own satellite, right to offer third-party services out of this data. In all these sector, private sector is to be integrated into the processes. For this, we are creating a governance system where this NSIL, similarly in space, all this organization will follow or will provide for the capacity development as well as regulatory institution for facilitating these kind of developments. So this is the overall vision of Indian Space Policy 2023. Now going to the analysis part of this, pros and cons. I again told pros and cons you should open up. So what are the positive aspects of this policy? Open up space sector to private industry. So monopoly of government is going to be removed. Could be lower cost of the space services, lower cost of GPS, lower cost of data services. All this can be another set of advantages. Incentivizes R&D. You might already know India is one of the country with very low levels of R&D investment. We only invest 1.2% of our GDP into R&D. So these are the arenas where India already have very strong base and expertise. So these are the areas which can provide a impetus or boost to increase the total R&D expenditure in the country. It can also attract FDI, which can also, India can be a base for space production in the future. Similarly, promotes collaboration between different organizations, that different organization can be domestic as well as international, private as well as government. Provides regulatory clarity, transparency through InSpace and NSIL, we already discussed this. So these are the positive aspects. These are just an extension of exactly what we were discussing earlier. There is no too much of gyan here. Whatever we have discussed in the previous slide, very similar lines, these points are generated. But when you are writing the answer in the exam, if you lose these areas, if you didn't done this positive negative analysis, then your answer is always going to be incomplete. Don't commit this mistake. If analysis is asked, do some kind of analysis on the subject. What are the negative aspects? Increased private involvement poses national security risk. You might have related to so many aspects. Many of the private companies have investments from China. Many of the private companies have investment from China. So how we are going to have this strategic aspect? How the regulatory system is going to have address this threat? So these kind of issues will concern about fair access to ISRO facilities for all private players, like crony capitalism issue. If private sectors are being opening up of private sector is a very great thing. But if the opening up is done in such a way that only a few elements or only a few people are given access to these kind of activities, then it is always an issue. Crony capitalism, like crony technological aspect, should not come into picture. If this is coming to picture, then this whole vision of this policy become compromised. Need for clear policies on liability, dispute resolution, and debris management. Debris issue is one of the major technical issue world is going to face. You might have already seen the cluster of satellites being launched by Elon Musk company. So these companies have launching 10,000s of satellites into the low Earth orbit. So this is going to be creating huge amount of space debris. Now with increasing debris, there is always a threat to your satellites. If there is a threat to your satellite, your critical infrastructure are under threat. If your critical infrastructure are under threat, your national security is under threat. So many things are related to space debris. How India is going to play in addressing this menace. How India is going to grievance redressal mechanism under the space policy. Similarly, lack of domestic capacity currently in advanced areas like human space flight. Like Indian space industry is still a newbie space industry. Even though if compared to US programs, you compare to USA programs, there is so much of technological developments itself that is still to happen in India. Including even though we are aggressively rising towards it, still there is so much development and capacity development to happen within the country itself. That is the whole crux of the point. So let's move ahead. Implications on Indian space ambitions. As I already told, what is the best thing to do here is you connect with different ambitions. You give examples of Gaganyaan mission, you give examples of MOM2, you give examples of Chandrayaan 3, or you give examples of other collaborations that is happening in the country. Even you can bring in the aspect, last time I didn't told like this, militarization of space. This is a leading issue or leading dimension that is opening up in throughout the world. Different countries including US and China already operating to some extent. So India should also have some aspects regarding militarization of space. You can give these as examples to different dimensions, and that you can easily generate 4 or 5 points that will suffice the demand of the paper. Can catalyze growth of private sector industry. India can become a space hub. Similarly, more capacity for satellites launches. Today you can see India has came up with this small satellite launch vehicle. What was the objective of bringing a small satellite launch vehicle? The total turnaround time. What are the other launch platform we already have? That is the PSLV and GSLV. So the total turnaround time of PSLV and GSLV, it's too huge. It's around few months you came to assemble all the systems and to get ready for a launch. So these kind of things can be avoided. Like with small satellite launch vehicle, you can instantly within a few, even 45 days or something like that, you can launch or prepare for a launch and get system in supply chain into work. So with this objective, the small satellite launch vehicle was launched last year. Similarly, partnership with industry can accelerate human space flight goal, that is the Gaganyaan mission. Similarly, with policies, focus can shift to R&D. As we already told, like so much of the responsibilities are being split between 3 different institutions. So ISRO can dedicate itself completely to the R&D work, while other institutions can look for the data management or the regulatory aspects of space industry. Increased global collaborations possible to access new markets, like space diplomacy aspect. This also we discussed in general in the international relations class. So that's all. Then in conclusion, you will write about it's a major policy shift that aims to make India a leading space power through self-reliance, commercialization, and international cooperation. These are the 3 limbs of Indian space policy 2023. So on that note, you can conclude the answer. Keep these in mind: self-reliance, commercialization, and international cooperation. So brainstorm the 3rd question, then we will go through this. Yeah, I hope you have gone through the question. This is a very factual, straightforward question. Elaborate on the contributions of Acharya J.C. Bose to the field of science. So very straightforward question. I don't think you might have any difficulty in planning or structuring this question. So you can introduction, you can write something about Acharya J.C. Bose. Body, it should be, this should be the major part of your answer. If possible, you can